Hello, everybody. Veterans Voice number 4. Welcome. And Veterans Voice is where us veterans provide a little bit of guidance and a little bit of insight to military leavers into what's coming up and the options open to them. And we look at some of the veteran journeys we've had so far. So my guest this week, and another Army veteran, seems to be a lot of Army coming my way at the moment. And he's had some interesting roles, to say the least. And welcome Ben James to tell us about them. So
Thank you,
hi
Matt.
Ben, how are you doing?
Thank you, Matt. And I'm sorry that you can't get anyone from the Navy or RAF, but obviously they're just too busy, or they haven't got a good story.
Too busy. Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, it is past tea time. So
Yeah.
So there we go.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, more than welcome, and it's really good to have you on. Likewise, like previous weeks, if you've got any comments, hi Zoe. That's next week's. She's obviously getting get a bit of intel into what's happening next week. Going to happen next week. So pop some comments in. I'll bring them up and we'll try and include them. So hi Zoe, hi Chris. A couple of points that came out of our previous chat was you used to be a professional musician.
That's right.
Yeah, do tell.
Well, I've had a very varied path to institutional investment management, which is where I now work. So the reason I ended up as a musician early on was because I had my midlife crisis at age 19. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school. I was good at a few things, but they were quite diverse. It was like I did English, music, and biology at A level. Those three.
Yeah, those
bedfellows. But I thought, hi Fiona. So I thought, if I should do this, I enjoy it and give it a shot now. Otherwise, I'll hit 40 and want to be a musician, and and that's not the right time to start being a musician. So did it at uni, did it for 3 years down in London, did some interesting gigs, and realized it was a pretty tough gig in general, pretty hand to mouth, pretty nocturnal, pretty much about not how good you are but who you know. So and then I had this kind of road to Damascus moment to serve, to join the military. So that was 2006 that I decided to sign up.
And not surf, as I thought you said last night.
Yes. So last night I was telling this story about how I had this moment where I was like, right, 2006, I just turned 25. I'm going to do this thing with the military. And I had this desire to serve. And Matt goes, yeah, well, I like windsurfing and stuff like that. So I was like, no, serve, Matt. So
Muppet Award goes to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just give us a little bit of insight into your go as far into your service as you like, but your transition journey and what made you make the decisions you made during that last few months.
Yeah, sure. So my Army career in a nutshell, I was an infantry officer in the Royal Regiment of Scotland for just over 7 years, and then obviously the first year being at Sandhurst, so 8 years in total. I was relatively late starter, so I started Sandhurst at 25. So a lot of my other officer cadets were 21, 22. So I was a couple of years older. And that helped shape things as things went on. I didn't know if I was always going to be in the Army. I really enjoyed it, but I had this desire to serve, this will to see foreign policy at first hand, and I just, long story short, ended up in a Scottish battalion, the Highlanders. I did a couple of tours of Afghanistan, one with the Highlanders as a reconnaissance platoon commander on Herrick 14. And then I was ops officer at Two Scots, the Royal Highland Fusiliers in Pennycook for Herrick 18 in 2013. And then in 2013, I met a girl in Edinburgh, and things changed, and realized that this was the time to tap out. Fell in love with the city. And if those of you who haven't been to Edinburgh, it's a wonderful place to live and potentially raise a family. So decided to press the button. So I pressed the button in March 2014, not knowing what I wanted to do exactly. I did know that I wanted to leave. That was key. So I knew it was time to leave. I could see the path ahead of me, and I asked to promote a year early to major, and they said you had the scores to do it, but it would be a disadvantage for you, and because you would only have 1 or 2 reports versus 3 or 4 for your peers at that level, and so you wouldn't score as well. And that to me said, well, that doesn't make sense. If you accelerate early, you should be on an accelerated path, not that it should hinder you anyway. Plus the opportunity, I was 35 then, and it's just like, right, it's time to go, and I was getting married to my now wife. But I knew that I wanted to stay involved in the machine. So one of the reasons I liked being in the army was that you were at the tip of the spear, and when David Cameron, who was Prime Minister at the time, said do this, you ended up being that tactical foreign policy on the ground. So I was on the ground, unfortunately, when Highlander McLaren disappeared from our battalion, and David Cameron was actually in theatre in 2011, and he was like, go find that boy, and so off we went. Similarly in 2014, when the Libyans were being trained in Cambridge, and they started causing an absolute mess, my battalion, our standby battalion, was called in to get them home by the end of the week. And it's in the press, and I enjoy being in the thick of the real life action. So I still wanted to be involved in the machine, in the world economy, and global affairs, but I didn't want to get shot at anymore. And so I looked at things like, I thought the UN might be a good thing for me. I thought something like NGOs or DFID or something like that would be really interesting, because you'd be involved in having an impact, a positive impact on people's lives. But by doing research and networking, I found that they were, for me, probably not a good fit. I felt that they had a lot of the elements that I didn't like about the army, namely bureaucracy and some of that, the bureaucracy that would hold you back, and it's not that rapid. But then I started looking into investments and finance, because we wanted to stay in Edinburgh, and finance is one of the biggest industries up here. And I immediately dismissed it. I was like, I don't want to be a banker. I hate finance, and it revealed a bias in me that actually could have held me back. But I realized that a lot of my mates or colleagues that I respected from the military had gone into finance, and they were good blokes or good girls. So I thought, actually, if they can do it, why have they done it? There must be something about it.
Something in it. Yeah.
It's interesting. So I decided to look into it, and just networked and went for oodles of coffees, and found out about various aspects of finance, and that there is actually this part which is key to the way the world functions, which is investments, and predominantly institutional investments. So the company I work for, Baillie Gifford, invests money in companies that we think are going to be worth more in the future, because they're adding value to society. So Tesla and Moderna are big companies that we've invested money in, and they're having positive impact on society, right?
Sorry to interrupt. These investments are actually part of pension portfolios and personal investment and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. So and the other side of that equation is where the money comes from, Matt, as you're right. So the money in institutional investment comes from big public pension plans, like for police officers or nurses or doctors or road sweepers or people who work and who are saving, and so you invest in these companies which have an impact, and in the long run, the pensions of these people who work hard are secured, and they have a nice retirement. So you're involved, you're a little cog in that thing revolving, and so you could have that work job satisfaction that you're involved in something greater than you, that allows you to work in Edinburgh and avoid tours to Helmond.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you're getting a bit of stick here, by the way, from the Marines.
Right.
Yeah. So
showing your age there, Ben. Your military career ended as I was getting smashing on Woodbury Common in commando training. That's fair enough.
Yeah, well, he's a young whippersnapper.
Yeah.
Another chap who has gone down the similar sort of route to yourself. So he's in the finance sector as well. So yeah, so you went for an internship
That's right,
with
to
Baillie
begin
Gifford.
with.
Could
Yeah.
you just
Well,
explain for people what that means?
yeah. So I decided. So it was about 6 months into. I took my whole 1 year off. Not 1 year off. My 1 year
That'd be
of.
nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's another tip. It's not a year off. It's hard work. I took that whole year of after pressing the button to refine where I wanted to go, and by about 6 to 7, 8 months of that, I knew that a client-facing role in an institutional investment job, business, company was what I wanted to do, ideally in Edinburgh. Now, there are only a few big companies that offer that up here in Edinburgh, but there's also your big ex-military internship courses on like Barclays, JP Morgan, and BlackRock and so on. And I actually did a 3-month internship with JP Morgan, ex-military internship, when I finished March, April, May time, whilst I was still applying for the Baillie Gifford job. So it sort of amplified my CV and showed Baillie Gifford that I was serious about this. But then Baillie Gifford has this 2-year internship training program for sort of mid-career experienced hire transitioners, if you want to call it that, from non-finance backgrounds, and it's the client service manager program that I joined. And I joined with a rugby player and a pilot who's actually ex-RAF and Flybe. And so they look for people who've got an interest in the world, who are motivated by being part of something, that actually has a positive impact on society, but you can be a sort of a good team leader, and so on, and bring all those transferable skills in, and they'll teach you how to analyze a company's balance sheet, and they'll teach you finance.
Yeah, because the important
So
thing here is, sorry to interrupt, the important thing here is you don't need to have an accountancy degree or anything like
no,
that. It's
no,
more, you made a very important point about the transferable skills and the
yeah,
life skills. They can teach you the rest, but
yeah,
it's that stuff that,
it is. And you know what? Just reflecting on all the LinkedIn posts, and we didn't chat about this last night, but I was reflecting on all the LinkedIn posts I've seen since the Queen's funeral on Monday, and one of my colleagues, Steve Campbell, who's at Baillie Gifford, RAF Reserves, 24 years in the RAF, he was in the parade. But one of the posts was someone, I think, who's a ex-military recruiter, said they had 10 days to rehearse this. Boom, there you go, world stage. Think about the skills that would require, and the discipline, the teamwork, all these things that you want. And do you want that in your organization?
yeah.
You can teach them everything else, but it's those sort of amplifying those transferable skills is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and be able to think on your feet. No plan survives first contact, and all that sort of stuff. You've got a question coming here from Zoe. Looking back, was a year enough? And would you welcome more exposure to South Street within the service?
Was a year enough? I think it was for me. I worked out what I wanted to do by about 6 months, but the key was I started when I pressed that button. I got that fear of, right, what the hell what do I want to do? And I really utilized all the resources that were available to me. Used all my credits, used the time off that I was allowed, went on the CTP courses, and I was fortunate in that I was based in Pennycook. I could go and have a coffee with someone. It's a 20-minute drive into town, 25-minute drive into town, have a coffee, come back, and do that over a lunch break, or just say, look, I'm going to take 2 hours this afternoon, I'll work later. So that was really helpful, and I was lucky. But if you're in Germany, for example, and you want to come to Edinburgh, that's harder. So you have to do a bit more virtually. And because I had also worked for 3 years, in Civvy Street, although it was as a musician, which is a bizarre life anyway, I was kind of a bit more au fait with what being a civvy's all about. But I think it's enough if you start early. But I think it's a good point, Zoe. You should always have a wee thought about what you want to do, and keep touch with your mates who are in Civvy Street, ask them what they do, and sort of just always have it ticking over, because there's one guarantee with the military is that you'll leave.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I say plan the day you start is the day you should start planning for your for leaving. But when we were speaking last night, you made some important decisions earlier on, and that one of the first decision was you decided on the location first,
Yeah,
and then to look at what industries you could go into within that particular location,
that's
rather
right. Yeah,
than looking at the industry
yeah,
and then the location. So that was
that's
get your
right. Yeah,
priorities right.
yeah. So it was a combination of, you know, going out from the outer circle in. It's like, what do you want to do? What don't you want to do? Don't want to live in London. Don't want to live in London. Okay,
Yeah.
so we want to stay up here in Edinburgh, because we love the city. More bang for your buck than say in London. The quality of life, small enough to walk across, go to the hills in the morning, beach in the afternoon. Big enough to have the rugby festival, international airport, all these good things. And then, you know, whittling down what makes, you know, what will get you out of bed in the morning. You don't want to clock watch. What motivates you? You know, pros and cons lists, SWOT analysis, all that good stuff. And I went and you know, applied for various different jobs to just find out what they were like. Like I went up to Aberdeen for a bit to you know, apply for an oil and gas ex-military internship with GE, which a couple of my colleagues had done. I got through the interviews, got offered the place, but just turned it down because it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But it would have been a good start. So it's that challenge of, you know, turning down things, even though it's maybe your first offer, is important if you know what you want to do.
This one's just you're getting lots of questions coming. You've obviously ignited some thought process in a bunch of people. This is very similar to one that I was going to discuss a little bit later on. And Trish is asking, what's the one thing you'd wish you'd known before you'd actually left?
There's
Which is a very
loads.
good
There's
question.
loads, Trish. But the one thing I'd wish I'd even done more of was being even more selfish. And that sounds a bit weird. It's because the military, the army I was in, will get their pound of flesh from you, rightly so, because you signed on the dotted line, until the day you leave. And so you have to really advocate for yourself. And I did as best I could, but I still had that mentality of serving the greater good. And, you know, it's you know, I've always done this. You've got to sacrifice yourself for the military because it's duty. You've got to do your duty, get it, but really be selfish about your time, prioritizing everything you need to, you know, advocate for yourself, and getting all the details on money, courses, who's doing what, time off, all that stuff, because your RCMO, the career management officer, is stretched and you are not their main priority. You know, you have to make you your main priority. So that would be the one thing that I would really accentuate.
Yeah, and if you the day after you leave, if you ring up the armed forces and say, "Can you give me a hand with this?" You'll not get it because they're looking after the people that are actually still in. So
Yeah.
it's a great one. Be selfish, because Civvy Street is I don't want to say a very selfish place, because people do pull together, but there's a lot more of looking after yourself and planning your own route and making sure
Yeah.
that you're the one in the.
I think it's a real tough one, because selfless commitment is one of the key values of you know, the military, and it's a similar thing to, like, you know, building your own brand on LinkedIn and showing, you know, people see it as showing off. You're not. You are building a brand, and you've got to, you know, blend that humility with professionalism. But I think selfish is the wrong word. I think advocating for yourself and really sticking up for yourself, because it's, you know, it's doing it for you and your future. For me, it was for my future family. If I didn't get it right, I've now got 2 young kids. You know, they may not have come along when they did, or I might have, you know, mucked up. But you have to advocate for your future family and your future self. And that sounds rather, you know, wokey, but no one else is going to do it other than you and your partner.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you have to really do it.
Yeah, and it's really important that you actually do this, and don't think, oh, you know, I'm bigging myself up, I'm being, you know, I'm showing off. It's not actually. And this is one of the things we teach is lead people to the conclusion that you're great in what you do, but don't tell them that you're great in what you do. So you actually have to do it through giving those examples and creating that image of yourself that employees can't do without you. And to do that, you've got to be a salesperson and sell yourself.
Yeah, I think Fiona makes a good point, and I don't like. Hopefully I made it clear in the last comment that it's rather than just being selfish. You have to do your job. You are armed forces, personnel after all, and the needs of the army and so on do come first. But you have to advocate for yourself and stick up for yourself, and make that space. So you have to champion yourself. I think is the better way of putting it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, we don't want to be advocating a bunch of jacks walking around. And,
no, exactly. Yeah. That's probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really interesting. So if you just give us a flavour of what you do now, you went through the internship and the decision process you made in going there. But what do you do within Baillie Gifford at the moment, just so that people can understand the route?
So for those of you who didn't attend it, we ran a military insight day at Baillie Gifford. I can send you the link to the video recording if you're interested after this, to just let Matt know or whatever. The other thing, so what do I do is I'm a director in the clients department at Baillie Gifford, and I'm a specialist on our US equity investment strategy. So we have an investment team which takes the money from the institutional investors, like the police of New York pension plan, for example, and invests it in a portfolio of 30 or 40 US companies that we think will be worth a lot more money in the future because they're growing. And I'm the liaison officer between the investment team and the New York City state pension plan for police. So I update them on their portfolio. So I have to learn what Tesla's up to, what Moderna's up to, what these companies are doing, the returns of the portfolio, whether they've made money or lost money over the last 3 months, and so on. And then I have to represent the firm externally to the client and to prospects. So it's a very varied role. So we have two sort of roles within the client department. There's one like me, which is this investment specialist, which essentially subs in for the investment manager to allow the investment manager to do their job investing. And then you have general relationship managers, and that's another quality that military folk bring. It's that understanding different relationships, whether you're speaking to a highly sophisticated investor or a lay person on the board of a pension plan, like the New York State Police pension plan. They'll have a police officer or two on the board, and they'll also have a extremely qualified accountant and all this sort of stuff. And you have to explain the messaging to the accountant and the police officer in the same meeting in 35 minutes. And it's fine if the performance is up, but if the performance is challenging, you have to explain to them why. And if it's very technical, how do you do that? As part of that role, you also run the business. You run the US equity business within Baillie Gifford. So I'm on the product group, and it's like running a small business within the business, which is really quite fun and entrepreneurial. And so you become a planning officer, a coordinator, a liaison officer, a team player, someone who makes stuff happen, someone who recce's and finds out what other teams are doing. So it's completely varied. So no day is the same as another.
Those transferable skills coming in again.
Yeah, exactly.
And you run internships. There's not one going at the moment, but you did give me a link to an early careers.
That's right. Yeah. So I co-chair the Armed Forces Network at Baillie Gifford with Sarah Reid, who's a civvy. She was the press officer for the Scottish government for military for many years. Now she's our press officer. And we have a few others in that, 25 or so others in that network. And our long-term plan is to have an internship at Baillie Gifford, but it's not there yet. We're working on it. But what we do have at the moment is a couple of things. We have the early careers, sort of old languages, graduate careers. So you're those typically who've just left university, but we're keen to be a diverse and inclusive employer. So there's no age limit to these early careers. So think of it as a new career scheme. So
career change scheme.
Career change scheme. Now, you will tend to, so you can be in investments, operations, accounting, tech, so information technology. Now, you will probably start with some wee faces, as I would call them, from my Scottish battalion, so from real young kids, because they will hire people from university as well. But if you're 45 and you've just done your Open University degree and you're leaving the forces, or if you're 50 and you've done the same and you want to change, go for it. And you'll probably dominate the graduate scheme in terms of performance. So there's that. Then we have the Client Service Manager program, which runs every year, opens in November, and closes in sort of February, March time, with a start date of September 2023. And this is the thing that I did. And so this is the sort of mid-career change that they're looking for. And you can be, you could be 25, 26, or you could be 55, 56. But you're looking for people who want to spend the next 10, 15, 20 years at Baillie Gifford being a client contact and managing these global relationships, from First Nations people in Canada, which I look after, to sovereign wealth fund in a large Asian country. Very, very different.
And so humanitarian missions in Africa and all that sort of thing, the skills that you gained there are very useful in the negotiation and discussion. There's some interesting stuff comes in. A little bit of a tongue-in-cheek one from Zoe. I didn't used to call them a WEX, we used to call them brews, but I think it's a Marines thing. But then something in from Trish. So had you not had the military service to pave your way, what would Ben the civilian need to follow to get where you are? So this is a really interesting one.
Yeah. Well, we have people in my role who are academics. We have people. Any path, Trish, as long as you are interested in the world, you're curious in how the world might look in the next 10 years. You have demonstrated an interest in working in teams, and you are a motivated sort of dynamic leader, I suppose. It doesn't really matter so long as you have these general characteristics that we look for, which is teamwork, curiosity, and dynamism, really.
And this would come out in interviews. It wouldn't. You wouldn't potentially get a job there saying, "I'm really interested in the world."
No,
it would.
You have to demonstrate it. You have to demonstrate it. So I mean, the group that's just joined us this September, very diverse. But last year we had an academic in criminal psychology from Mexico. We had someone who worked in the third sector, raising money for charities. We had someone who was an accountant. We had someone who worked for MI5. It doesn't matter. Loads.
Yeah. So a good variety there.
Yeah.
So that brings us neatly to where I would say we're almost bang on the button. Just if you've got any veteran's voice message that you could sum up in a couple of sentences, what would that be to those leaving?
Yeah. My message would be, it's a full-time job hunting. Start early, advocate for yourself, and you've really got to advocate for yourself. Start early, and run your CV past your partner, in my case, my wife, for every job, and rewrite it for every job. And the CV literally gets you an interview. That's it. Yeah. Networking like fury is the thing to do. Coffees and network, and use the officers and soldiers and sailors network, because they'll all help you.
And LinkedIn and things like that as well. Yes.
So that's my 1 times 5 different pieces of advice.
That's all right. Stick as many as you want. You just have to get it in 30 seconds. Brilliant. That's excellent. Well, thank you very much. If you've enjoyed that, let us know. If you've enjoyed it, stick a like on there. Tell your mates about Veterans Voice, and if you didn't like it, let us know. But just don't tell your mates. So I'll just say thank you very much, Ben, for joining us. It's been
my pleasure, Matt. Thanks for all you're doing as well.
Oh, you're welcome. And we'll see you all next week when we've got a Marine to to break the army trend. So
Oh,
we've got Zoe joining us next week. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
good night.